Over the last few years, John Lewis has undergone a complete transformation in terms of the way the public engage with the brand. Many years ago, it was seen as a kind of reliable but slightly dull choice. But now it's actually one of Britain's most loved brands. And that partly comes from the fact that the advertising is so well loved. It's a favourite of people in the industry as well. As a result, John Lewis's sales have gone through the roof. In the 4-year period that this particular IPA paper covers, we saw a remarkable 37% increase in sales at a time when many of the competition have been struggling, and a correspondingly big increase in the brand's market share. Every pound that John Lewis have spent on advertising has generated over £8 of profit. Not sales, but profit. We like to think of it, there being kind of 10 golden rules that you get from the John Lewis story. The first rule that I think comes out of the John Lewis story is make stuff that people want to watch, listen and talk about. And when you do that, then the results can be remarkable. This is advertising that people are not only happy to watch, but that people actively seek out. That can only happen if you really capture the public imagination and do stuff that people love. Rule 2 would be nothing sells quite as hard as emotion. If you think about what the John Lewis Christmas ads are like, there's almost no selling message in there at all. The store gets very little mention. It's a really quite pure example of using emotion to sell stuff, and it works incredibly hard. Remember, this stuff pays back 8 to 1. Rule 3 is tell a good story and create a world. One of the best examples is Monty the Penguin. What we did beyond that film was then to take that story onwards. So, for instance, there was a book, there was a website and an ebook. You could follow the romance between Monty and Mabel in social media and actually see that developing. You could go to Monty's lookout den in the John Lewis store. You could take your own soft toy to John Lewis and then have that recreated in virtual reality, and then your toy could be part of these stories as well. So you go from a little emotional story to creating a world that people can almost live in, as it were. The key to all of that is involvement. Our 4th rule is to create characters that have a life of their own. What we call distinctive assets become a very powerful branding device. So again, going back to Monty the Penguin, one can use the penguin as a shorthand for all the emotional memories that you've built through the advertising and the storytelling. So one of the almost unexpected successes of the Monty campaign was just how much money they made from merchandise. The revenues from the merchandise was enough to cover the production of the ad. Rule 5 would be creativity is not a luxury. You're walking a tightrope constantly between freshness and novelty and consistency. That, for me, is the essence of disciplined creativity. Ads that win creative awards do tend, in general, to be much more efficient at selling stuff, do tend to make more money for clients. It's the creativity that is the secret to the payback. It's the stuff that is both winning at Cannes and that your mum loves that tends to be the stuff that makes money. You also need to have the right scale, the right amount of money behind it, the right number of exposures. If you don't get that, then all the creativity in the world won't help you. When you do get strong viral success, when you do get fame, it's usually because you've got great content and you've put a lot of effort into making sure that lots of people see it. And again, John Lewis is a prime example. We kept doing broad scale, broad reach, high exposure advertising in primarily TV over many years with stuff that people loved. And only when you've done that for a few years do you get the kind of fame that then makes people seek this stuff out online. Rule 7 is that for a brand like this, TV is indispensable. Really big paybacks, great fame like this only tends to come when you've got both great content and you put enough money and effort behind it. You need big audiences. And there is still no other medium that really creates emotion at scale in the way that TV does. So point 8, TV is still indispensable, but online makes TV work harder. As the years rolled on, people started to anticipate the John Lewis ads. So what we began to do was launch the ads a day early online so that those fanatics could actually see them there first. So you get kind of an extra fillip from all that online buzz. These brand films are a gateway into actual buying behaviour, that people could go see a story that they love, get involved in it, click buy. We're actually closing the sales loop there. Point 9 was fame is a virtuous circle. The way this works is you produce great content year after year, you make sure it gets massive exposure year after year. Press coverage and coverage in TV and radio amplified the effects of everything we did. We calculated that we got an extra 500 million exposures just from press coverage alone. And then what started to happen is, as the campaigns evolved, what we've seen is suppliers increasingly willing to fund part of the advertising and to additional executions which then feature their own products. And then we also saw charities wanting to get involved. But Age UK made a second film which was then used to highlight the problem of loneliness amongst old people. And the synergy between those two efforts was remarkable.
It's hard to believe that 1 million older people can go a month without speaking to anybody. It doesn't have to be this way.
Okay, everyone, that's a wrap. Let's go home.
Rule 10 is you've got to be dedicated to effectiveness and you've got to be dedicated to evaluation. John Lewis and Adam and Eve have consistently followed the same strategy for years and years. They've got quite a hard-edged approach to evaluation. So they use econometrics to measure the sales effects, to measure the effects on their online business and their offline business, to measure the financial payback. They believe in great advertising, but they also measure the results in hard business terms, and they do that constantly. The John Lewis case can teach us quite a lot of things. We often tend to think of emotional brand advertising as being just a long-term thing. And what is quite clear is that the John Lewis advertising did do that long-term job. You can see that in the way that all the metrics keep building year after year. And this explosion of fame each year when the ads are launched generates a lot of footfall and a lot of sales and a lot of profit in a relatively short time. So what this case shows is that when you get it right, you can have long-term brand building and you can have short-term sales and profit.